Hey guys, instructor pilot Chris. I'm going to share with you some exciting news. I was able to successfully fly the Blade 235 CP yesterday, and I completed my first 3D flight ever. So that's super exciting, and I want to share my experience because if you're transitioning to helicopters or if you're just advancing your abilities within helicopters, maybe this will be helpful to you. But I'm going to share my experience, and hopefully you can let me know what you think. So in setting this whole setup in prior videos, I showed you that when you bind radio to one of your helicopters, there are different modes. And so it's important that you're very thorough in setting up the helicopter correctly, right? So I'm going to assume that you're going to follow the directions, you're going to be very careful. Maybe have a mentor if possible, or maybe a helicopter club. Someone from a club can help you out if applicable. But assuming that all the setup is good, right? And that's fine, that's great. Now you're gonna fly. On the helicopter, if you follow the directions, at least on the DX6, initially you have a switch here on mine, it's H. You got 0 and 1. And essentially the 0 setting is a safety mode. And when in 0 mode, the throttle doesn't work. And then before flight, maybe after you connect the battery and everything's good and you're ready to actually fly, you would go ahead and transition the H switch to 1, at least again per this transmitter, per the guidance in my manual. Yours might be slightly different, but you will have a button that has, they call it a hold button. Okay, so great. Now on top of that, if you were an airplane, you'd be good to go. You go fly, everything's fine. However, in helicopters, and really when you're talking about helicopters that have various modes, you will have another switch, and it's going to have 3 settings. And in this case, for this transmitter, it's going to default to the B switch, and that has 0, 1, and 2. Now what that means is, when I first did my very first flight, transitioning from airplanes and having a little bit of real flight experience, when you start in mode 0, it's kind of like a dummy proof. The onboard system on the helicopter will keep you safe. It's kind of like almost flying a drone where you can steer the helicopter around, and you can still crash, you can run into things, but it's really going to do a good job at maintaining your attitude. And I didn't realize how good of a job it does until you take that setting away. I just thought that this model was inherently stable, great design, which it is, but that's not the reason it was so easy to fly. That was because I was in the 0 mode. So I've been flying, I had 3 flights on this helicopter. I probably have maybe 15 flights total between the Blade CP and the Blade Nano that I bought about a month ago. And so I've been kind of itching to do something a little bit more extreme. And this is really the topic of the video. How do you know when you are ready to go to the next level? And this is the same principle across real aviation. It's a real common problem. It's very common. What I mean by that is if you're a student, you might not feel ready to go to the next step. Sometimes you have to have your proficient instructors say, you are ready, I've seen this before, and then that gives the confidence to the student to continue. Sometimes you have a student that's overconfident that wants to try something new, more advanced, and because you are an instructor and you've seen this before and you've seen certain things that you're not happy with, maybe you say, hey, let's do a little bit more training before you do it. And so what I'm trying to say is that you have to find out where you're at in that spectrum of, am I ready for the next step or not? And that's across all training. What I would recommend though for helicopters is, because you're using so much more tail rotor, that's something I would really prioritize, especially if you're coming from an airplane environment. RC airplanes, you're not used to that much rudder. Even if you're flying gliders, it's a lot of rudder usage all the time. So that's the first thing I'd point out. And what I'm suggesting is there's certain things you want to do to elevate your ability to be ready to do 3D or maybe more extreme maneuvers. And there's different ways to do it. I'm going to share what worked for me. So they have a simulator called Real Flight Simulator. A lot of the hobby shops, Hobbytown has it on site. It uses the same transmitters and setup, and even on the graphics, it's oftentimes the same helicopters and whatnot that you would actually own. And so you can practice muscle memory and muscle movements on what inputs on the radio do what to the aircraft in flight, including in case if the helicopter is inverted. And the main difference with that is that this is your throttle. Usually that's cut off in normal mode, and that's full throttle. But when you're doing 3D, this is neutral. This would actually make you climb, and this would make you dive very quickly. So that's the big difference when you're inverted with a helicopter. It has 3 different modes. And then you just need to pay attention that what does your up and down stick do here, right? So you don't get all confused. So my advice to you is to practice in a safe environment, and I would recommend a simulator. I don't think there's any better environment. I'm going to go ahead and loop in a clip here from 3 weeks ago when I was at Hobbytown, and my success rate was really bad. It was around 50% success rate. I kept crashing every time I flew inverted. So I'll go ahead and include that video here.
Dude, I'm sold, bro.
All right, so what I learned after watching the video a few times, and it wasn't apparent while I was actually playing with the simulator in the hobby store, I wasn't going high enough. And so I kept making very similar errors. And the 2 things I noticed was, 1, I'm not going very high when I start the maneuver. And then 2, I'm very slow when I actually do the maneuver. And that's because it's not second nature yet. And so I'm actually taking time to think about what do I want to do before I do it, and there's a delay. And things are happening so quickly that I crash. And so I didn't see that until I watched the footage that indicated what was I doing wrong. Now, if you had an instructor or a friend, they could tell you what you're doing wrong because maybe they could see it and you can't. But having the video, I took a step back and I saw, hey, I'm too low when I'm doing these maneuvers. And part of that, maybe you watch someone experienced do it. Maybe you're watching people on YouTube and they're really low. Well, they're probably really highly trained and proficient. You're not ready to be that low. Give yourself extra space. Go higher. Same thing with real aviation. Just because it can be done in a certain manner doesn't mean you're capable. Not yet, anyway. You have to develop those skills. And so that was a aha moment for me. And so this week I'd really been itching to flip this switch. And so I'll include the video at the end of this, but that's what I did. I did it in a safe environment. I did it near a park, big open area. There were nobody around, nobody to injure, no animals. And I flipped the switch while I was in neutral mode, so this is pretty much neutral. And you can hear the difference. You can hear that it's in a different setting. And I used full throttle, and I went extremely high very quickly. And you can watch the video on what I did, but just by going high enough and pulling back stick, the helicopter did more or less, it accelerated very quickly. It did back stick on my right, and then right about here, I transitioned on my left stick, my throttle, and I pulled down, which then gave me thrust inverted. And that was great. So I managed to do it. I actually did it twice. You'll see in the video. It worked for me, and I just think that maybe you can try something as well. And the biggest recommendation is practice in a safe environment. And then when you actually do it, go high. Another way to be proficient, since I said I had to think about things, how do you get better? Frequency. Fly more frequently. And use more tail rotor. If that's the problem, how do you use more tail rotor? If you're in a big park flying around, you're not really concerned about hitting anything. And so you can be sloppy. But perhaps if you have the Blade Nano, the smaller version that I highly recommend, maybe you fly inside your living room where you have maybe a 15-foot rectangle and you're forced to use your tail rotor. And so by flying in a confined area, a safe confined area, forcing yourself to get very routine with your muscle memory and your rudder usage to avoid walls, that trains you so that when you transition to the bigger helicopters and you're doing 3D flight, in addition to the simulator practice, you're just more proficient on using your tail rotor and such. And so those are the two things I'd recommend. Find the mentor first, but then actually the other two things, play on the real flight, either purchase it or go to a hobby town and practice to see if you like it, if it helps you. And then if you have a smaller version of a helicopter, fly indoors and just fly as often as you can. And I think at some point you'll know when you're ready. You'll have a pretty good feeling. You're probably never going to be 100%. I wasn't 100%, but I knew the risk. I knew I was excited, and I know I've been practicing, and so I was ready to give it a shot. And so what I'm saying is you'll never be 100%, but at some point you got to go for it when you think you're ready, and then hope for the best. So that was my story. Hopefully that was helpful and inspiring to you to go ahead and try 3D flying. It's a lot of fun. I love it. I have my batteries on charge, and hopefully I can get some more flights in. And hopefully over time I'll set new goals on proficiency, different levels of, maybe I'll learn how to hover inverted, or maybe at some point get lower. So there's going to be different tasks as I get more proficient and better, different targets that I'm going to set for myself to maintain or measure my performance as I improve. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.